Do you listen to Joe Rogan?
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen a full podcast, but
Yeah.
like I've seen plenty of like pieces of podcasts.
You're missing out, bro. Like, if you're not listening to Joe Rogan, you don't really have a pulse on what's going on in the world. You know,
Nice.
That's where all the information lies. That's what I knew Trump would win when he went on Rogan and Kamala didn't. I was like, oh, it's over, bro. It's over. He got like 100 million views.
That was a big deal.
Yeah, Rogan's the guy.
100 million?
So I'm like halfway through the Zuckerberg interview right now.
I didn't like him before, but he's cool.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. Yeah, Rogan. Trump had, I think he had 30 million in a week, and then now it's up like over 100 million. Rogan's the most influential person on like in media. He's the most influential person in media.
100 million views domestically?
On YouTube, on YouTube. I'm not sure if it's domestic.
So no one knows like what countries these are coming from?
Bron's looking up. He'll let us know. All right, but this is like what? You number 3 on the podcast? You've been back a few times?
Way more.
Way
5?
more? 5 Wow. Well, thanks, bro. Thanks for coming back. Let's tell the people who you are. Introduce yourself for the people that didn't hear. This is the re-release. So, who are you?
Ian Ford, Capital Bank, loan officer, and love being a loan officer, helping people buy homes, helping people finance homes, get to the right option for them and help them make the most educated decision.
You've been in the game, what, like 10 years?
I am going to be wrapping up year number 12.
Wow.
This spring.
1,000 plus loans, right?
I don't know if it's quite 1,000, but we're getting there.
Man, you've done a few hundred VA loans though, right?
Several, yeah. No, I mean, if I'm not at 1,000, I'm like really close.
Of VA?
So, no.
Of just total?
Yes.
Let's just start saying 1,000,
1,000 loans.
Over 1,000. Yeah, I've done over 1,000. Yeah, we got to market. You got to market yourself. Saying like I'm near 1,000 is not as cool as saying like I'm 1,000 at like.
Sorry, I'm just trying to be genuine and truthful.
McDonald's doesn't say about 80 million. Well, they kind of do say about 80 million. Yeah. Well, welcome back, man. Thank you, bro. I obviously like we always need lenders to come on here and give commentary, and I think because people are like the most upset with the interest rates right now. I think that's the biggest thing in the country. But what do you? So let's just dive into that. Like, what's happening with rates, like nowadays? Because I know it keeps fluctuating. Towards the end of the year, we got optimistic about rate cuts. It happened, and then I feel like Jerome Powell was like, just kidding, And I think he does it. It's like almost like he just like, the last thing I heard about Jerome Powell, the last thing I read about Jerome Powell, he was like, yeah, I just don't think that Americans need like rates to be cut. And I'm just like, does he have his pulse on America? So what do you think about?
Well, yeah, I mean that's one of the complaints throughout the industry, and I think probably other areas as well, is that these Fed members speak, and I mean it's just like they're super ivory tower, completely disconnected. But yeah, I mean they've basically, like, real estate's been dead for 2 years, and nothing's been happening, and it's because rates have been strangled, So yeah.
When you say real estate's been dead, like what do you mean? Like
dead, but like how many transactions? Question for you: how many transactions are we at this past year versus 2-3 years ago? Right.
I don't know the exact number, but we're down. I think it was around like
down bad, right?
Yeah, maybe.
And
like
I don't want to say dead, but
Yeah.
I was looking at, the mortgage industry has 50% fewer loan officers than 3 years ago. So
see, yeah, but I look at stats like that as just the cream is rising to the top, right? Because in the
everyone who was a tourist and like got in because their buddy was like, hey,
exactly. The real estate industry is the same. I think there's 1.6 million agents in the country, and the average agent last year did 2 deals. So, the agents, so there's a bunch of people licensed and part of like, I guess like the National Association of Realtors, but they're not doing any deals. And I think that we saw the spike in agents. I think it was up around 2 million during COVID, which was interesting because I felt like it was harder to be an agent during COVID, but everyone else felt like it was an easy time to get in. But I didn't know that loan officers kind of follow that same trend of in, out, when times get tough. I know a loan officer that was, I thought he was crushing, and he had like this big TikTok following. He was dancing in all his videos, right? And I thought he was crushing. He got licensed in like almost like 30 states.
Wow.
And he's working for one of the big 5 now, and maybe, so I don't know, like I was like, did that correlate to business? But even people that I thought were really good at. Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. And it's not like, I feel like a loan officer has a good set of skills that could transfer pretty well to something else as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Okay, so what do you think is going to happen with the rates? Like that's what everyone's like, when are we gonna be at 5%? And I know you don't have the magic ball, so let's give a disclaimer that Ian cannot control the rates, right? But what's the nuance of everything that people need to understand?
It's hard to say. I mean, we've got this new administration coming in, new policies. We were talking about, you were talking about Jerome Powell, and basically what happened is that the Fed cut rates twice within the past 3 months, and each time the Fed cut rates went up.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's sort of what makes it so hard for anyone to say, is because it's not like the Fed makes a decision and then things, it's not like anyone has control over this, right?
Yeah.
It's a massive marketplace of billions and billions and billions of dollars moving around between different investment marketplaces, right? So it's hard to say. We think rates are going to go down. Like Freddie Mac's latest projection had them closer to 5% towards the end of the year. That would be great, but difficult. Rates have been in a range between around 6.25% to 7.25% for the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So while we're still in that range, what I'll say is, anyone who's got the rate sort of at the top of that range, be ready. Like, let's say your rate's 7.25%, have your eyes on refinancing when it's at 6.25% until we get out of this range, right? So.
Okay. Explain. So I think when people hear Jerome Powell, the Fed cut rates, they think that means they cut the interest rates. Right. So explain the difference. Like the Fed cut rates doesn't necessarily mean that the interest rates went down, right?
Yeah. So it's not like some direct correlation to mortgage rates, right? It essentially, what they're trying to do is having a target for the rate at which banks can borrow from each other, right?
Okay.
And the mortgage bonds are still a marketplace that, like, just like any other marketplace, there's people trying to make money and trying to make strategic decisions about when they should be in that market and when not to be.
Yeah.
Right. And so people investing in mortgage bonds is good for interest rates, and people pulling the money out is bad.
Okay.
Right. So one of the things conceivably that could be going on here, as rates went up in October, right? Fed says, hey, we're cutting rates, is that concurrently it started looking like Trump was going to win.
Yeah.
Right. And the last time Trump was in office, he was good for the stock market. Well, if the stock market's doing really well, then people are going to be investing in the stock market and pulling their money away. That would conceivably pull money away from mortgage bonds, right?
Okay.
Causing rates to go up, right?
So interesting. So
they're trying to, make predictions about like what is policy going to look like and what are the markets going to be doing 3, 6, 9 months from now, and how do we adjust to that?
yeah, I feel like the ball keeps moving. What is it? The goalpost keeps moving. It's like interest rates are going to go down at the end of 2024. Then it's like by summer 2025. Now it's like end of year 2025. Like Americans have just been waiting for this for so long to like make a move.
Well, we have had a couple little blips where rates for a short period, very short period in the fall, they got a little bit under 6, but they've been in the low 6s a couple times.
Yeah.
So it's how ready are you going to be decisive when that happens?
Hopefully around like March, April, they were like 5.9, and I'm like, Ian, send us the pre-approval letter, we're ready to go.
All right.
You mentioned to me before that Trump's tariff talk was impacting the rates negatively also. So can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be, right? And that, I think that's another factor in Trump looking like he's going to win. Rates start going up because he talks this really tough game about tariffs, and who knows what's actually going to happen and what he's actually going to be able to enact. And I mean, it seems he's being pretty serious about it and not just talking, right? But the idea is that a tariff is basically a tax, right? Taxes go up, right? Prices go up. Prices going up is inflation, right? And inflation is why we're in this situation, right? High inflation leads to high rates. So I think a lot of investors, seeing the possibility of Trump winning, seeing him sit there talking about these tariffs, they try to be proactive and get ahead of that.
Yeah.
By not ending up in a position where they've got a bunch of loans out at a 5% rate and inflation is close to that, right? So,
yeah, it's really tough out here, man, when you're working with buyers, because I know you look at the numbers, like you're seeing the numbers, you're in charge of kind of putting together the numbers, but when you see people that didn't buy, I think 2017 was when I first heard like the market's gonna crash, right? We're in a bubble, and we're almost 10 years from there. And there's still people that are waiting for the market to crash. And really what's happened is home prices have gone up significantly, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and rates have gone up 4%. And like the best correction that they're gonna get, at least what we predict in the short term, is like the prices aren't gonna go down, but you'll get, maybe a 2% break on what the rates are now. And so what are you telling your buyer? And we all kind of tell our buyers the same thing, so I can kind of already guess what you tell your people, but what do you tell your people that are on the fence, like that are like, oh, I'm waiting, like what do you, how are you giving them confidence to go out into the market and make something happen?
Yeah, I mean, can you find a home that you love at a price that you can afford, There's all kinds of sayings like, have you ever heard time in the market beats timing the market.
Yeah.
Right? Just get invested. And real estate, especially, and most investing, it's a long-term game, right? And the people who have really seen a lot of wealth creation through real estate, today, these are baby boomers who've been holding onto their house for 20 years, right? Just from the simple act of making their mortgage payment every month, right? And just waiting, right? They've seen the market go up. I mean, in a lot of cases, the houses have doubled, tripled in value over that time span, right? At the same time, they paid the mortgage down.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't necessarily say that, you sit there waiting for the perfect time, right?
Yeah.
Because is there ever a perfect time for stuff? And even if the perfect time comes, are you going to know it's the perfect time, right? If the market starts going down, right, people are going to think, well, is the market going to keep going down?
Yeah.
Right? When is like, let's say the market makes a V like that, right? And before going back up, like how many people are actually going to like say, all right, this is the exact bottom of that V and the perfect time to buy my house and actually buy it at that point, right?
I feel like
what are the chances that you're going to be able to do that?
Yeah, I feel like that about Bitcoin because I was never like, I think Bitcoin is going to become a currency that we use on a day-to-day basis, especially because like, better than anyone, I don't go anywhere like with my wallet nowadays. I'm just like, can I Apple Pay? Like, I'll Venmo, like, and I think Bitcoin will work in the same way. But every day I look, and I have a little bit of Bitcoin, nothing significant that can make me like matter. But I look at the price of Bitcoin and I'm just like, and I know it'll fluctuate, but I'm just like, man, it's like 92,000 right now. And it was like 30,000 a few months ago. And I'm like, man, I should have like just been throwing all my money in there.
Because you've got hindsight now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because like, but yeah, because I have hindsight, but also like, I think sometimes people choose not to believe in the asset, that the asset will grow, and they choose like they think that you're like being on some fairy tale vibes, right? So it's like rates are sub 3% today, right? When rates were sub 3%, for some reason it doesn't signal to people that like, hey bro, like I should do whatever I gotta do to like buy a house, because we know that rates are not gonna be this low again, and then it's gonna appreciate. But for some reason people are like, they're like more upset that rates went to 7 and not upset that they missed the boat.
Yeah, but at the same time, back when rates were sub 3%, you had people doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Right. In terms
and they made their money back though.
Yeah. Well, now we see that, right?
Yeah.
But this is all going to say that, like, okay, so what would you rather do? You have your 2.5% rate, but you got to like throw an extra $50,000 cash at it and waive every contingency that you have, and like pray that like
it's all smooth.
The seller goes with you over 15 other people.
That is precisely what
that's what that was. And it's like, okay, back then, like, I've been saying the same thing for years now. It's like back then it looks like, hey, that 2.5%, well, man, should have done it because rates went to 7. We didn't, or rates went to 8 actually. Back then we didn't know that rates would go to 8.
Yeah.
And back then, we didn't know that we'd be wishing for that 2.5% rate, right? We were looking at the, oh man, extra $50,000. So it's like you never know when the perfect time, or when it's just going to be like, the stars align and it's just like, today I should buy my house. Just if you can afford it, and you need to do it, like do it.
We just kind of talked about what you were going to talk about in your real estate take, so we're going to have to think of a new real estate take. You should talk about the cats.
You should talk about the mice.
Oh my gosh, dude. I have PTSD from that. Let's move on. So you mentioned investors a lot, and I don't think people know that, or at least people listening, that you have like a pretty solid little real estate investment portfolio.
Little.
Ian's a very modest, humble guy, but like you have some properties, right? More than the average American. So like, let's talk about that a little bit. Like, let's talk about like your investment portfolio, right? Like, how many homes do you own?
3 and a piece of a small hobby farm.
You do have the hobby farm, which is really cool. I tell people about that all the time, actually. So you have what? And you're in Baltimore, right? And you have what? 2 row houses, and then you have the big house.
3 row houses. The big house.
Oh, it is a row house too, right? I call it a city mansion. That's why I'm not referring to it. And so what's the breakdown? So are they like? So you have the city mansion we'll talk about, but like you have, and I'm not at any point gonna ask you how much cash flow you're getting, so don't worry about it. But like at the 2 row houses, are they like 3 bed, 2.5 bath, 2 bed? Like what's the kind of the
4 bed, 2 bath, and 3 bed, 3 bath.
Okay, 4 bed, 2 bath, 3 bed, 3 bath.
Yeah.
And then are you renting those 2 out to like one person each, or do you have rooms?
One's like a family. No, those are all just one person on the lease.
Okay.
One's a guy that I know, and one is a family.
And are those in like neighborhoods like West Baltimore, 60,000 bar cash, Section 810 there? And so what's
one's in Greektown. I would live in Greektown.
Okay.
And one is in Milton Montford. It's near the Johns Hopkins campus.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
And then you have your city mansion.
Yeah.
And what is the makeup of that? Like how many bedrooms, bathrooms?
7 bed, 6 bath.
Yeah. And then how big is that?
I don't know, like 5,000 to 6,000 square feet.
And you rent that one out by room?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. They're so dope to know. Like, I just like people that are winning. Like Bronson pulled up today in the Tesla, and I'm just like, it's just like a flex for me, like putting a Tesla, bro. Like, it's just like people are winning. So like, you own a 7 bed, 6 bath house, like, you know, in Baltimore, which if Baltimore ever comes back, you know, you're gonna be sitting on like 2 million. Like if you own the property, like, you know, like if you own a big house in Bloomingdale or Logan Circle now, if you owned it in the 90s, you probably could have bought it for 30,000 and now it's easily 1.8, you know, so.
Really? Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, because they're all 4 level, you know, 6,000, 5,000, 6,000 square foot houses. So
I mean, I was saying just like the $30,000 number.
I mean maybe I exaggerated
cheap,
30,000.
you know,
maybe 70,000, maybe 180,000, right? Like it wasn't, you know, that's 14th Street. So you heard the stories about 14th Street in the 90s. It was the red light district, so it was definitely not expensive to live there. Okay, so when you were, you know, out buying your first piece of real estate, was it like, I'm gonna invest? Like, which house was the first one?
The big one.
The big one. And so when you bought that, did you buy it with the intentions to live in this big ass house?
Yeah, I lived there for years.
But like solely, or did you know like I'm buying this as an investment property also? Like I'm gonna move people in right away. Like did you have a 60-day window where you like enjoyed it dolo?
Yeah.
Yeah?
But, you know, I also had it in my head that it's just like, you know, at the time I was like in my 20s living with my boys, and I was just like, well, of course I'm gonna like rent some rooms out to some friends, you know?
Okay.
So.
And do you feel like you've had like those have been successful like real estate investments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have. I mean, not without let's call them learning experiences, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure. I think that's something that every investor is going to have to deal with. So like, you know, I'm not going to get up on the podcast and be like, I'm some real estate mogul, right? Except that's what most real estate podcasts do.
I got $100.
Yeah.
You don't got to use your own money.
Yeah.
Go find it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No,
How to invest in real estate for free and get $1,000 and scale your real estate portfolio to 7 figures in 12 months, right? Like using none of your money. It's just like the average. Okay, you didn't think that this was the real way to do this, right?
No, I mean, but they never talk about like you know, your learning experiences.
Yeah.
Since I guess that's what we're calling them.
So what does that mean? What kind of learning experience have you had?
A lot. I mean, you know, a lot of it just comes from, you know, especially owning like an older house, right? But, you know, there's stuff that goes wrong with houses that you are going to have to fix. You have renters, you know, now you're relying on someone else to do what they're supposed to do, and not everyone does that, right? So you just have to be prepared. Right?
Okay.
So.
And do you have I don't know if this violates fair housing at all, but like, do you have like some people are, okay, I'm gonna go Section 8. Some people are like, I'm gonna go nursing, traveling nurses. Some people like to rent a military. Do you have a profile of tenant that
someone
you like?
someone I feel like I can have a good relationship with who's going to be reliable. That's like really it.
So do you like to be more of a like? Are you more of like a hands-on landlord? Like you like to know the people?
So I no longer live in the big house, and so basically I had a kid. My wife had a house. We moved there, right? And I am not really in Baltimore so much, and it's I found it a lot harder to manage anything that I'm not nearby, right? So I've got a property manager just so that I can be a lot more hands off.
Yeah, speak on that, because you were self-managing before, and now you just went property management.
Yeah.
So speak on like the decision. I mean, was it because of distance, or what was the decision about that? And what
Distance. I mean, honestly, like it is, in my opinion, a part-time job, right? I think a lot of people, you know, maybe some people have figured out their system to the point where it's really hands off, but like renter leaves. Now you've got to be in there making sure that the house gets, you know, everything, that all the wear and tear gets fixed, right? And you're getting new people in there, right? So I mean, I'm with a property manager now. He's great. And I think finding a really good property manager is, you know, I recommend it. So.
And did you only get the property manager because distance? So like before, were you just self-managing? Like
yeah, I was self-managing, but if I had found this guy even when I was self-managing, I like in retrospect, I would have done that
Because you're actually pretty wary of people. You're more, I don't want to call you like a pessimist, but you're more skeptical of
Be a
people.
landlord for 8 years.
Yeah. I'm very much like, oh yeah, like everybody, because I know I'm gonna mostly.
You should get a property manager.
I do need a property manager.
For real, like if that's your personality type, I strongly recommend getting a property manager.
Oh, because I'm gonna get got.
I think God, but like you just got to be on. You got to like really be on people's case. And I think going in with the expectation that you're an adult and I expect you to act like an adult is the wrong way to treat being a landlord.
Yeah.
So.
No, we actually, our DC house, we rented that out, and I mean, like even going through this.
So far, so good?
So far, pretty good. Like so obviously we wanted to sell it first, and we decided we're gonna keep it, rent it out. Just going through that Section 8, like that voucher program, and trying to get that tenant in there was ridiculous. So I was like, man, I wish that I had somebody that knew this process to like speed this along. Right. And then luckily for us, like our landlord, I mean our neighbor, she Airbnbs her house, right? And so she's like, hey, I want to sublease your house and like throw some Airbnb tenants in it if that's cool. And we're like, cool, as long as you're paying our mortgage, like that's okay. But
wow, so that's what you're doing.
Yeah, so our next door neighbor, she always had, she has like a few rooms Airbnb to her house. And then she just approached Lauren and was like, hey, is the house still available? We were like, yeah. She's like, well, I already Airbnb. Like, do you mind if I like rent this out? And I use this as an Airbnb property also.
How long has that been going on for?
She's been in there since November. And it's been pretty smooth. She's like a pretty chill person, chill tenant, but the HVAC did go out. Our HVAC went out and they just replaced the furnace today. So that's solved, but that took like a month all to accomplish because it went out December 21st, and I had the home warranty. People go out, and then the home warranty people told me it was a pre-existing issue, so they're not going to replace it. So there was a lot going on.
So you had a learning experience.
Yeah. And I had like a $4,700 repair that I wasn't anticipating. And then our tenant, like we like her, but she's like can be like a little nuisance sometimes. So we are dealing with it. So she signed a 6-month lease, and so we're trying to get into our house before that happens. So don't tell the underwriter. And then also I'm like, do you want to renew this lady? And we're like, yeah, let's just renew her for like another year, and then we'll go property management the second time. So like she can't we don't get those phone calls and have to like stop what we're doing to like solve the problem.
How is she a nuisance?
Well, I don't talk to her directly, but like her and Lauren chat, like for example, when the HVAC went out like in December and we were trying to like solve the issue, like we have something in the lease that like the tenant has to pay the first like X amount of the repair, But like she wanted her people to go out there, then they couldn't figure it out. Then we had to get our people out there, then they couldn't figure it out, and then we called the home warranty. But like January 1st, she's like, I don't think I should have to pay my full rent because we didn't have heat from like the 21st to the 1st. And I'm like, that's kind of fair, but like you just said that on the 1st. And then also since she's subleasing, she made a case like I can't get anyone in there like because it's not livable. We had to buy space heaters like that day, so we got a lot of space heaters, and the space heaters, because she had them on in 5 bedrooms, they tripped the circuit. So then anyway, she's like, we're like dealing with this, and then the rent thing, and then she's like, oh, I don't, I can't get this like rented out on Airbnb. And so we ended up going there for some reason to like try to fix something, and they were like people in the house, and we're just like, no, actually you are renting this out, like this is being rented. So it was just like little things like that, So I could see the value. I definitely see the value of property management.
Like how much time did that take up on your end?
I mean, probably only a few hours. If I'm being realistic, but like it's
Would you rather not have dealt with it?
Yeah, I'd rather not have dealt with it than pay somebody a couple $100s to do it. So what do you like about your property manager? Like, how can someone identify like a good property manager in your opinion?
Yeah, no, that's a great question because I think that they come in a lot of. Some are way better than others, right?
Yeah.
Just like overall professionalism, I think. Responsiveness. He's been super responsive, and I think like when someone's getting back to your calls, texts really quickly, or picking up, as you call, that's a great sign. Talk to them about the process. If it's just like, well, we put photos on Craigslist, then my guy, he was able to detail his whole like every step of how he gets someone in there. For example, you're asking them about what's your process for evicting someone. You're asking about like, all right, how quick are your turn times for maintenance? How'd you meet your maintenance guy? And what's your process for like maintenance requests, right? But he's just been great because of, I think the responsiveness is the biggest thing. For example, you just dealt with this issue where it took a little while to get the HVAC fixed or replaced, right? And now all of a sudden you've got someone not wanting to pay rent, right? Because you are required by law to have the place heated.
Does, yeah.
Like, is he going to be able to, like, does he have the network and the availability to make sure that the day that goes out or the next day he's there, or whoever his guy is there fixing that issue.
And you have like kind of a list of questions in your head that you can shoot out to somebody to interview them.
I don't know if I've got like the specific list, but I mean, there's definitely stuff that I want to know, like I just that I just mentioned.
So when you chose to invest in these properties, one, why did you choose the Baltimore market? Why did you choose the real estate type you purchased instead of the West Baltimore $50,000-$60,000 tenant? And like, what's like your long-term investing strategy, in real estate investment strategy?
Yeah, I don't know if I have like some specific strategy involved other than I know it's good to own property, right?
Yeah.
Just in terms of I like investing in places that I would want to live. I think it's, partly exciting for me, right? And I like turning someplace into like a great place to live.
Because you're bullish on Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, I love the city, right? Yeah. Bullish as in, like, do I think like the economy is going to take off? I have no idea, right? There's all these great ideas floating around out there, but the city always moves really slow, right? For example, there was plans to build this like shopping and residential center down the street from me when I bought my house in 2016. And like, I mean, it's all anyone would talk about. And as of now, all they've done is break ground.
Yeah.
So this is 9 years ago, right? So there is that. City moves slow. But no, I mean, I just think it's a great place to live. And I believe that we need more good landlords, right? And when I say good landlord, look, I don't jack people's rent up all the time.
Yeah.
And I make sure stuff gets fixed when it needs to get fixed, right? And I think there can be like a slumlord problem. I can't tell you the number of times that people have come to me saying, oh yeah, I've got some horrible issue with my house, and the landlord just never bothers fixing it.
Yeah.
Or, I moved out, did everything I was supposed to do, keep calling them for my deposit,
Just keeping the deposit. That's crazy.
So stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the city, and I like being a part of it.
And then why buy like those properties in the neighborhood you have instead of like the West Baltimore Section 8? Like,
yeah, I don't know. It's I think the Section 8 situation, it is harder to be a little more analytical about, right? It's harder to find people to work on those properties because, you park a car full of tools in certain neighborhoods.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of contractors who just don't want to do it.
just like, your guy, what happened to him?
Yeah. That was in D.C., actually.
That was in D.C., though.
Yeah. That was in a nice neighborhood in D.C.
Yeah, I mean, $1 million neighborhood, right? Do you have like a number? So like for me, when I think about real estate investment, and I have my like one investment property, and I mention all my lofty goals to you all the time that I think are realistic, but they're like big. And that's based on like the lifestyle that I want to live. Like what I'm like, this is the lifestyle I want to live. This is like the retirement I want to have. And this is like the amount of money I need, right? Do you think about it in that way? Like, do you have like a number cash flow wise that you're trying to hit like consistently? Or
I think that's sort of dependent on what's going on around you, right? Because that cash flow number, that can change like in 3 months based on the housing market and based on interest rates, right? Your cash flow number looked a lot better when you could get a rate of 3 or 4% than at 7%, right? So I think that comes down to more consistently doing your due diligence. And, I think part of being a savvy investor is like, what you can get out of the market, right? And you're running numbers. And before you buy a house, you've run numbers on many houses like it to see, all right, is this actually a good investment? Or you're running your numbers in whatever market you're looking at. And it's hard for me to tell you that, right? So. But
you're not like relying on, you're not like building a real estate portfolio to rely on it for income later on. Like what's like the play, like you just like, I like Baltimore. I think people should have nice landlords, so I'm gonna buy some houses. Or is there like a play that you're running?
Okay, so from that sense, a few $100, mortgage gets paid down, and places where I want to live, right? In terms of places where I'd want to live, yeah, absolutely. I do see appreciation in those areas, like you said, my house, if Baltimore keeps going, right, I'll likely be getting some pretty solid rent off of it if I need to rely on it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not necessarily in it to like squeeze every last dollar out of it that I can, but over time, you expect your mortgage to stay the same and the rent to go off, right? I've never raised rent on a renter who's living there, but like say someone moves out in a couple of years, rents are probably going to be higher, and I'm probably going to be able to get a little bit more out of it, right?
And you're a BRRRR guy, right?
Yeah.
Can you break that down for the people?
What is it? Buy,
rehab,
refinance, rent.
Yeah. Nick, break it down for the people. So explain your process, because you love the BRRRR.
Yeah, I mean, just because it's like I'm trying to I love the idea that I can get an asset with not that much money out of my pocket, or get as close to my original cash position as possible, right? So you're trying, I'm definitely always on the lookout for a house that might be, let's call it in disrepair. I mean, maybe not like completely falling apart, but might need some work, right? Where I can build value. And I think, it's from the standpoint of, okay, I'm doing something good here, right? As in, this house currently sucks, and I'm going to make it someplace nice for someone to live, right? I think that's net positive, right? I hate the speculators who, find some house or some piece of property for super cheap and then just let it rot for 10 years and wait for the neighborhood to come back and then sell it.
He has a crackdown on things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you are actually preventing the neighborhood from becoming something, because there's this eyesore sitting there, right? So from that perspective, but also because I can now add my value, refinance the house, get my money back out, and now I have a house with rent, possible appreciation, and I might have gone back to net zero. I've had one house where I was able to be positive, right? So I was able to take out more than I had spent.
So even though you don't have the cash flow, but you have your money back.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do have cash flow on it too.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Because, I turned it into a nice house, and now people want to rent it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, I like the BRRRR strategy. I think that, you got to find the BRRRR market. When I hear about people utilizing the BRRRR strategy, I hear about them doing that in middle America, like Ohio, Michigan, like Alabama, Louisiana, those areas too. And I think Baltimore is price point wise matching those markets a lot. And so you still feel like there's a ton of there's some BRRRR opportunities in Baltimore.
I would think so. I haven't been super plugged into it lately.
Yeah.
Right. But I would think so, just because I think that there's kind of a lot of just from clicking around, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of nice real estate available for rent. And if you can pay an extra couple $1,000s, I mean, renovating a house nicely, I don't think there's that big of a price difference, right?
Yeah.
A few extra $1,000 and people will, clamor to try and rent that place.
And stay there for a little while too.
So I haven't bought a house recently. The last one I did was in 2022.
Yeah.
But I have rented all my houses out.
Okay.
Or re-rented all of them within the last year.
Yeah.
Right. So I do feel like the big house, that's almost 10 leases right there.
Yeah.
Right? And I do think there's a premium for a nice place to live.
Yeah.
For sure.
Do you from a financing aspect? So we quickly cover BRRRR, but for the average investor, let's say I'm trying to buy my first house. How should I? Do I have to go 25% down? DSCR? What's how does it? And then rates are higher, right? Investor rates are not 7; they're closer to 8 or 9, right? So
right.
how does someone even get their first property from a financing standpoint? What do they need?
I mean, the first property is they don't own a home at all.
I mean both, right?
I think buying a home to live in is a great thing to do. And you tell me. You're the expert on this part. We see houses where there's a lot of competition, but are there houses out there where, it might be a little bit dated and you can get some good seller concessions and get a good deal on the house?
Yeah.
I think that would be a great place to start, because part of what you're learning as an investor is how to manage the house itself, right? And owning a home, I think that's a great first step. You own a house, and now you know how to, over the next few years of you owning that house, you're going to be understanding what it takes to own a house, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned vetting out property managers, right? Well, let's say you've got a house. You can vet yourself and see if you like working on the house, right? Painting, right? Doing little fixes. See if you think that's something that you could enjoy doing. But also, let's say you buy a fixer-upper, and I'm not talking about a place that's a wreck, right? But a place that might, over time, you might want to update that bathroom, right? Or put a kitchen in.
Kind of like my house in DC.
That's a networking event. That's how you vet out contractors, right? You have a kitchen that needs to be redone. Well, now you have a job, and you can bring people in all day to look at that job, and you can talk to contractors, see who's fast in giving you your estimate, talk to them about, ask them like what their plan for this or that is, right? And see how they work with you. And I think that's a great way to meet people, right? And start building a team, right?
Yeah.
So if someone's thinking of getting into real estate investing and they don't have a house, or they're not at least owning the house that they live in, I think that's a great way to do it. Now, growing a portfolio, right? You bought that house as a primary residence with like a low down payment, right? Without having to do that 20% down. A couple years from now, I mean, it's normal along the course of people's lives that at some point they now get another house, right? 3, 5, 7. I think what's the average length of home ownership? It's like 7 or 9. Yeah, 7 to 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So at some point that house becomes a rental, right? So.
And then you buy your second one. Yeah, that's what we're doing. We have the one. Now we're going to buy another primary. But I'm going ham sandwich on the real estate investment. I'm like always, when I talk to real estate investors, like the guy who in Richmond, the question I always ask is like, what's the what's the point of entry? Like, what's the cost of entry, into the market? So like, is that like I need $50,000 and I can play ball, or is it like $100,000 I can play ball? Like, what's the entry point?
What did he say?
He said like 50,000, and usually you said 50,000 in Baltimore, and I think most people say like 50,000 is kind of like where you need to be able to like do something. This guy I follow in Ohio, I'm gonna find him and interview him here at some point. He's like doing, he has like 150, and I talk about this guy all the time. He has like 150 properties in like Ohio. And he's doing
kind of crazy when you think.
He's doing like DSCR. No, he makes $150K a month from his properties, and he has over 100.
What?
And he's doing like
he's making $1,000 in rental profit for each house.
He's at like 500 to 800 is his like on everything, and he talks about like the 700 number a lot, So whatever the math breaks down.
Is that off the bat? Like he buys the property and immediately he's got $700 in cash flow?
Yeah, he's like getting a lot of cash flow, and he's property management, so he's like totally hands off. And he's doing like he said he's putting like 15 and 20% down, but he's buying properties that are like 70, 80,000. So he's bringing like 10, 15,000. He's not even bringing 20,000. So like that's kind of what I want to do to like get my first few and then get to like a certain number, like maybe like 10,000, 15,000 net cash flow.
Is he burning them?
Is he burning them?
Yeah.
Not that I know of. I don't get any burr activity. I'm gonna get you out of here on this. The $1, all right, so you're like a great guy and you like believe in people, right? And like things can change and like people just don't have opportunities, right? Baltimore, not that you know a ton about this, like, I don't know how much you read up on this, but Baltimore has the $1 house program, right? And recently I say like, yeah, that's cool if you could buy a house for $1, but if you don't know what to do, then it's not beneficial to the neighborhood. And the example I give is like, if you, me, Kim, Russ, and let's say Dan, right? We're able to buy a house for $1, the block would look different in 6 months, right? And like maybe the neighborhood will look different in 6 months. I don't know if someone that already lives in the neighborhood can, benefit from, like, can do that, right? So what do you think about that programs like that, and the mission to revitalize the neighborhood with those types of
So it did revitalize a bunch of neighborhoods.
Okay.
Like Fells Point, Butchers Hill, I think they did it. And I know someone whose dad, back in the 90s, bought the house for $1 and then worked on it. I feel like people were a lot handier back in the day.
Yeah.
Less computer screens and more like fixing stuff.
Yeah.
Because
if you didn't know what wrench you were getting, your dad was hitting you with that. Bring me the screwdriver. Boom. If you didn't know what it was, you had to get beat.
Right.
TV, the scene on TV where it's like, bring me the Allen wrench, and you bring something else, and the dad's like, are you stupid? You don't know what the Allen wrench is? So they were handier, bro, because you would have had to catch those hands. As I digress.
I mean, it worked great.
Yeah.
I think usually with the programs now, like vacancy to values and stuff like that, there's like a requirement that you start working on the house. I mean, back then it was like you had to buy the house as a primary residence, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And you had to be living in it or commit to that. But I think the idea is like, hey, look, if the requirement is that someone has to start fixing up the house, I think the last I read of it, it was like 18 months, but I would say even sooner than that, like get to work, right? If we're going to give you a house for $1.
Yeah.
I think it can be a great idea, right? So
yeah, do it.
We've seen it happen.
All right. Well, where do we, go ahead.
If we get people really invested in the neighborhood, right? And
do you feel like the requirement should be that it's a primary residence?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem though is some of these houses can be in pretty rough shape. And then now you're sort of keeping it exclusive to people who have a bunch of money
Yeah.
to fix up the house.
Yeah. Or
So-
understand the financing aspect of it.
Right. I do
Yeah.
know that vacants to values was sort of investor targeted.
Okay.
You had to show that you had the ability to fix this house, and you had to get to work on the house
Right away.
Right. So I like that.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, we're gonna get you out of here, my boy.
Cool.
Thanks for joining. Any last words for the people?
Buy a house.
Buy a house. And where can they find you? How can they hit you up?
You can find me online. Instagram, Ian_Ford_mortgage. Yeah.
All right. Find Ian Ford. He's with Capital Bank. Instagram, Ian_Ford_mortgage. You can also hit me up. Ian's my go-to lender. So if you're looking to buy a house, like hit me up. I'll connect you with Ian. He's better than everybody. And thanks for joining me, my man.